songs of experience, and we will now continue with our discussion about the great perfections. And we're at this point talking about the perfection of concentration, and we will explore the root text itself, and then explore the different commentaries. And if we are able to, then we will cover the great perfection of wisdom too. So first, then, I hope all of you enjoyed your weekends. I hope you had a nice little break for yourselves. So now then the break is over, it's time to kind of bring ourselves back to the classroom and back to the teachings. So then now we are at the 31st verse in the Songs of Spiritual Experience, which goes on to talk about the great perfection of concentration. So the first two lines reads, concentration is the king that reigns over the mind. When left, it is as unwavering as the king of, maybe chronological. Can you pass this? So then the 31st verse, which goes on to talk about the perfection of concentration. So the first two lines of the verse, it reads, concentration is the king that reigns over the mind. When left, it is as unwavering as the king of mountains. So then concentration, here understood as that single-pointed concentration on the meditation device, is the king that reigns over the mind. So herein it talks about it talks about the power of concentration, that how when we develop the cultivation of concentration as a practice, then we begin to exercise a sense of control and power over our mind. And then the second line, when left, it is as unwavering as the king of mountain, uses a classical metaphor of the king of mountains to kind of describe the function and quality of such a concentration. So when we're talking about mountains, then even though all phenomena are impermanent herein, in this context, the metaphor, the king of mountains, is meant to inspire a sense of stability that we find, a sense of unmoving, unfluctuating feeling that we get when we look at mountains. So concentration, when it is left, it is as unwavering as the king of mountains. When the mind begins to abide in its natural calm, due to the cultivation of concentration, then it's unmovable, it's not easily disturbed. Yes.
아니 뒤에 가서는 루센레스로 루를 셈라 지랑 예수로 말을 쉬워져 근데 그거 그래서 루센레스 루비 대첸든스 근데 something is in there 아니 something 들려냐 매치 데조이나로 아니 먼저 루를 셈듯이 쉬워는 제도니 하나 먼저 루센레스 가르려나 지게 용량 이게 다다 드르르 셀라 디기 먼저 제도로 그다음에 다시 제가 드레스 코인 하면서 안주 드레스 코인 남자는 되기를 해서 이 가정만 동안 남자 되기를 위해서 라 정말씩 하기는 타이가 없고 나이 집어도 남자들 거의 주부가 그래서 당당한 소리 지고요 봐 수수이 다 호로 이제 못 돼요 그래서 근데 이 상대는 양면 지리는 수수이 생 가와미과 가와샤고서네 아니 때문에 돈이 라 당당한 소리 타미가 이제 가와이 주부 그래서
So then the next two lines, when set forth, it engages with all objects of virtue. It induces the great bliss of a serviceable body and mind. So then, when it's left alone, this cultivation of concentration as a perfection, it is unwavering, it is unfluctuating. But when it begins to engage its object of meditation or the meditation device, then it engages all objects of virtue, all virtuous actions, virtuous thoughts, without any resistance, without any resistance, and it induces the great bliss of a serviceable body and mind. So herein, when we're talking about serviceable, then it means then it could be understood as the mind and the body become totally pacified by the cultivation of this concentration as a perfection. So normally when we look at our own body and the mind and how it relates to sensory experience, then it is very restless in the sense that it begins to run after sensory experiences in the form of sound and so forth. So, but when you begin to cultivate concentration as a perfection, then the mind and the body both become very pacified, and it loses its restless sort of nature. So.
That the individual anything another the same as over this the version of the entity be shilla kushura ani the darshan that the same that the revolution in the jabu na jigi achai on the jiwa this is ani pa yo in any kind of tamai ne give me what this is really sa that the day in machine the darshan is ra the darshan ne jo on go now that page ne jo le yamichi ne ne le zhen ne zo gi par cho na de ne nami di daul shan pe shan ra ta daul di ma to la sentem bu ne chu ma ka san na na so bi ji su le ne ji da ro na zo di ga le sen shu ro se de ga su le sen shwan de tu ra din na ji nami di ka tu she ro re cha ta de someday di ka je tin ne de zo ka le chen na na la nami dar jom se cha na ye de dar ji pe shan di su bi ne ro na tin je da da de sambe de zo ra je de che je de nami se tin je de ge na nami ge pa dar jom ge tin je de su zo di je na ta par je te ma na ra en te yes. 아니 내중에 전에 내가 지금 지단이 좀 그래야 아니 진대비 아니 남매는 저기 유스라 내중에 전에 대들지 한대 취전 대신 장소로 와서 진대비 아니 다바 되는 게 기부 충소야 내가 나중에 맨날 쉬어서
So then the 32nd verse, knowing this, the great accomplished yogis constantly apply meditations, destroying the enemy of distraction. I, a yogi, have practiced in this manner. You who aspire for liberation too should do likewise. So then the 31st verse, it talks about the nature and function and quality of this cultivation of concentration as a practice. And then the 32nd verse, it kind of goes on to talk about how this cultivation of concentration serves as the antidote to overcome distraction and to stop the mind from straying away or to stop the mind from being easily excitable, running after sensory experiences all the time. So in knowing this, the great accomplished yogis constantly apply meditations, destroying the enemy of distraction. And I, a yogi, have practiced in this manner. You who aspire for liberation too should do likewise.
내가 나중에 다가 저기 가서 남아치고는 내가 다가 소리라 지구 남벌이 유지한다는데 지원하다 그거는 지원을 가지고 지나요 샘도 지금 나도 거지라 상호에 코모도 셀레모스 그거발이 이거는 다른 또 지수저지를 시 지수 중 그래도 그 샘이 다보지 못 받참이 그래도가 지구 남벌 이원 남벌 이원 지를 다 받참이 근데 무슨 느낌이 샤네 대바 빵 전반에 아니 가지고 최근 내것도 동위에서 내려라 최근 내것도 어쩌다 가도다 최단위로 시기 바로 대박으로라 동반이도 이거와 근데 내백이 내려라 스라 내려라 아니 가지고는 제지 냠버도 수수이 배다 근데 위치가로 이루는 이루 무효의 배출되는 바 제지 냠버서 제봐야 붙여봐라 또 요인은 근데 생각 제지 샤니 아니 그래서 양벌 조건을 보다가 또 가히 많이 보면 정화도 배우는 말로 또 지지도 샤니 예스라 아니 지지 양벌 조 띵쟁치 있는데 왜 되지 이런 거 띵들라는 상대라는 콜타니 만들어도 와 저라 근데 왜 아니다 근데 지금은 아니 상대 관계도 봐야서 근데 왜 상대 관계도 보시는지가 다 너무 줄로 좀 내리라 상대는 스시 지원은 먼저 이 시원해 봐야 지금 가서 생 힘보고도 오체가
So then the Guru Puja goes on to talk about the great perfection of concentration in this manner by abandoning dullness, excitement, and the distractions of the mind. Then one begins to cultivate meditative stabilization of concentrating single-pointedly on the truth of emptiness, and then the mind becomes truly pacified. So dullness, excitement, or agitation arises as hindrances in the cultivation of single-pointed concentration, and then distraction, of course. So in the process of cultivating concentration as a perfection, then one needs to overcome and abandon these dullness, excitement, and distraction, and then one begins to by abandoning and overcoming these hindrances, then one begins to cultivate meditative stabilization, which begins to cultivate meditative stabilization on the truth of emptiness, single-pointedly, and then the mind becomes truly pacified. This.
제가 알아서 이마지를 빼셔요. 그래 내가 많다. 나도 수시 제거해지 내가 저. 그 저번지를 내가. 그래서 뭐 인터넷에 내지 그랬어요.
Yes. So then these are the scriptural kind of instructions that we find from the songs of scriptural songs of spiritual experience, as well as the Guru Puja, and this kind of defines the kind of hindrances that we face in cultivating concentration and the importance of cultivating concentration. And now, rather than just leaving it at a scriptural discussion about the importance of concentration, then we need to kind of relate it to our own daily experiences. How then, due to a lack of concentration, then the mind begins to become a little bit too scattered, and the mind becomes sometimes stretched to its limit because of too many distractions. And we need to kind of think about how, if you're working in a company, then if you have a little bit too much on your plate and you begin to plan a little bit too much, then you cannot really begin to focus on one particular thing at all. Your mind becomes very distracted, very scattered, and then you are not really able to achieve too much. Thus. So then, now when we're talking about the kind of hindrances in cultivation of concentration, then we need to remember, what do we really mean by dullness, and what do we really mean by excitement or agitation. So agitation and excitement is when the mind becomes a little bit too uplifted for its own good, that it begins to be distracted and it begins to run after sensory experiences at the slightest provocation. And then dullness is that sense of the mind being weighed down. Then it begins to give into mental fog, laziness. It arises because of a sense of laziness. So then when you begin to try to read a book, if you develop a sense of dullness in your mind, of a lack of clarity in your mind when you're trying to study a text, then that's an example of dullness, dullness posing a hindrance in your effort to concentrate on the text. And now, in order to overcome this, then as we already discussed, the importance of mindfulness as well as awareness. So in the traditional presentations, then mindfulness is likened to a rope, and then and awareness is likened to that vigilant spy, which begins to see if the rope is being stretched a little bit too far. Yes. Yes. So then this I think we can experience when we try to sit down to meditate. Sometimes when we sit down to meditate and try to focus on the meditation device, or try to meditate or focus on a virtuous thought or in a virtuous action, then we begin to realize that we become distracted by the undercurrent of thoughts and emotions about the past or the future and so forth, and then we lose the object of meditation itself. And sometimes then when we begin to sit down to meditate and try to concentrate, then we cannot do this at all. Our minds are sometimes a little bit too dull, and then the mind becomes weighed down, and then there's a sort of darkness that clouds the mind at that moment. So this is an example of excitement as well as dullness posing a hindrance in our cultivation of concentration in meditation practices. Yes. So have you ever had this kind of experiences? Sometimes when you sit down to meditate, the mind becomes very excited and becomes distracted easily by thoughts about anything, or by sound or sensory experiences. And sometimes when we sit down to meditate, then the mind becomes a little bit too bogged down, weighed down, and then it cannot really visualize anything clearly, that there is a sense of darkness in the mind. So then our root gurus kind of used to instruct us that when you actually begin to meditate as beginners, then it's important to remember that you need to meditate when you feel like meditating, when you have an inclination, and when you really feel like you want to meditate, and you're in a good mood, then you can begin to meditate. And then if you're not in a good mood and you do not really feel like meditating, and then if you like force yourself to meditate, then it's not so effective. So it's always important to remember that when you sit down to meditate, before you sit down to meditate, to kind of look at the mind itself, whether like if it is inclined to sit down for a meditation session, or you're in a good mood at all. This we can kind of relate, this kind of instruction, we can relate it to the fact that when we sit down to read a book, if you're in a good mood and you feel like reading, then if you read the book, then you are able to retain the information that you are processing, and then there is a sense of joy in you reading that book. And then but if you are tired mentally as well as physically, and then if you say that I have to read this book and force yourself to read this book, then there is no joy in the first place, and then you're not able to really process the information, and then you're not able to retain the information. So from this we can kind of relate it to the meditation practice too. You need to have a sense that you want to meditate. If you do not feel that, then forcing yourself to sit down in meditation then renders the whole meditation session ineffective, and then you struggle with meditation sessions. And relating to that, then when we're talking about the shamatha meditation techniques or meditation practices, then it is advised in the classical textual presentations that in the beginning you have to keep the meditation sessions as short as possible, and then do as many sessions as you can, rather than aiming to sit down for a long meditation session trying to concentrate on the meditation device. It's better to keep the meditation sessions as short as possible and try to do as many sessions as possible, rather than aiming to do like one long meditation session in the first place. Yes.
there was a little brushing up. I need to get that they were Janet. So then you join the road is told me, the Macuas, for some of their bedroom is that. I need it with any kind of Jabra system, and it's where this good issue, good one, chicken, mother, and I don't talk about this. Some of the pushing down money. And do the empty meat. Thank you. That's a lot of stuff. That's a general idea. And that's not for Kawai. I'm just showing you that. And this is now to the Congo, something like Thunder Catching Massage. Chili can I jump with that? Can I jump with that? She comes like Comjay and the Kawai to brush. She doesn't know my lap from Jay and the dog. She said, no, we should have the Jaguar. And there was a she tried and Lama sold her.
So then there are many instructions from the classical textual presentations about how one begins to meditate. But then rather than going into a detailed exploration of these instructions, I think we can keep the instructions short, that before we begin to meditate, like what are the postures that one needs to assume. And so when we're talking about sitting down to meditate, then first it's important to kind of make the environment in which you are, the environment or the surrounding in which you are meditating a clean place, so that it's more conducive for your meditation practice. And then it's important to it's important to sit on a comfortable cushion or a meditation mat. It is advised that when you sit down to meditate, the mat should be a little bit more uplifted on the back part. So this is advice from the classical text. And then it's also the importance of a straight posture is stressed. If you assume a straight posture, then there is a freshness and vitality in the body, and then this inspires freshness and body vitality in the mind too. And then it is also said that when one meditates, one should let the gates of the eye, half closed, half open, rest on the tip of the nose. So this depends on the size of the nose, I suppose. If your nose is very small, then it's very hard to kind of concentrate on the tip of the nose. And then you might feel a little bit sleepy after a while. Then it's also stressed that you should place the tongue on the roof of your mouth in order to, this helps to not the throat become too dry and the mouth become too wet with saliva. Yes. So these are the kind of general instructions one can refer to when one sits down to meditate. And so many people are actually interested in meditation. They kind of approach meditation as a practice before studying any scriptural instructions. So maybe now this is the kind of this is the way people approach meditation in this day and age. But I guess an interest in meditation itself should be appreciated. And now in this day and age, due to the internet and technology, you can find many masters and teachers on the internet who offers you very concise and effective instructions on how to meditate. Yes. So the way I see it, I see some people meditating on huge boulders, on huge pieces of rock. So I think this is quite dangerous, and it's not so effective for your meditation sessions too, because when you're on such a high, such a huge piece of boulder, then there's this danger that you might fall off anytime. And if your mind has that sense of worry about the safety, then you cannot really concentrate well on the meditation device. It begins to be preoccupied with this sense of concern about one's own safety. So this is why we say that before meditating, the surrounding needs to be safe and clean.
It looks good on Instagram. Looks good on Instagram.
자전화가 잡라다는 인지 못한 거랬어.
이제 다 내가 저 내기 뭐지 다 무슨 이제 이제로 메시지 같이 주시라 메뉴가 딱 가지고 걸어 소식 좀 하셔야 된다 지금 생각을 하셔야 항상 공정이 되는라 그렇지 맞지 엘레나도 진짜 공대 진짜 뭐지 여와이나 아 그다음 저기 동안에 지금 가와이나 봐 내가 왜 알아서 지금 그거 빼 칼로다 자가 전전에 배트고 선바 때 비우나셔라 담도 대로 담도 야다 마트 딱 가르 징이 하고 봐 진저스 카톡 바까야로 시대 때문에 그 동안에 저야 보다 봐 지금 가면 되는 우마마 따와서 다리게 되는 우마도 사요 야래 야래 부디가 미바로 시작이라 아니 가리지 난 딜러 자체타는 지기 수준이지 우마가 로고서 지 수준 디바다 지 마로가 자마 다수 상이라 내 요새라 내 우리려면 게위지 자야서 수준이야 렌스 선언도 근데 지사에 있어라 다이네 아주 남이야 지나 요라기 시시오라나 아니 퇴바미는 공부디 라동장이 제베인다 오라 나시레서 뭐라 제가 공부도 자다 퇴바체 베기 좀 있으라 퇴바지 전 상시 당야지 시지는 공전을 제야지 this is
So then generally when people think about meditation and how they approach meditation, then this does not entail a lot of study and contemplation before actually cultivating a practice of meditation. For example, many lay people come to go to retreats in monastery, in monastic institutes, saying that they want to calm their mind a little bit, they want to kind of rest the mind a little bit, and then they begin to stay in retreat for a week or two as a form of resting the mind, of taking a break from their daily engagements. And this is the kind of approach nowadays towards meditation from the general lay population. And then most of them use breath as a meditation device, and they begin to place their mindfulness totally on their breath, the act of breathing in and breathing out. And of course, this helps to kind of pacify the very excitable monkey mind, as we say, and it kind of gives us a respite from the incessant undercurrent of thoughts and emotions that we experience daily, and it is effective in this sense. And then this breath meditation maybe sometimes could progress towards opening up our motivation in the sense that as we begin to breathe out, then we kind of practice Tonglen. As we breathe out, we begin to imagine that we are breathing out. By the act of breathing out, we are dedicating all our virtues for the sake of all sentient beings. And then as we breathe in, then we kind of imagine that we are taking on all the sufferings of all the sentient beings. So this is the kind of general approach that lay people have towards meditation. But then in the classical outlook, then it is said that without study and contemplation, then going straight to meditation is like trying to climb a rocky mountain without limbs. So without study and contemplation first, then it is understood that in the classical outlook that meditation would prove to be a futile exercise. Yes. So then, generally, when people think of meditation, they have this idea of staying calm and being at rest and being at ease. But then, when we talk about meditation from the Buddhist perspective, then we talk about there being two types of meditation: a sort of a stabilizing meditation, or which concerns itself with concentration or the development of concentration, and then an analytical meditation, wherein you begin to employ rational analysis to come to an understanding of the scriptures as well as the teachings. So then, when we think about meditation, from the Buddhist outlook, then we begin to understand that there are different types of meditation. And then, when we think really carefully, then all forms of rational analysis, when it is being done by placing the mind on singularly on the topic, then it is in a sense a meditation in itself. The fact that you begin to receive a teaching from your teachers in the in the traditional monastic institutions, you begin to receive a teaching, then an explanation on the commentaries on these teachings. Then you begin to contemplate on your own, and then you begin to debate about it with your fellow monks and nuns in the debate courtyard. So in this process, there is it's a constant process of investigation and rational analysis. So this whole process, in a sense, it could be understood as analytical meditation. Yes. So then, now when we try to relate this to ourselves, then we can begin to think about the kind of topics that we discussed in the sessions last week, and we can try to contemplate on these teachings, on these topics, and try to analyze with our own reasoning, with our own intelligence. So if we begin to do this, then this process of contemplation and analysis is in itself a meditation, an analytical meditation. Yes. So then, I have a friend, a roommate. I used to have a roommate, and then generally when we say that someone is studying, then we get the idea that people begin to kind of read a whole text, whole book, and then begins to like try to take notes, revisit the notes. But then I used to have a roommate who like when she only used to like look at one page of the text and then like kind of lie down and sleep, and then when we look at such a person, then we feel like they're not studying at all. But then if there is an exam tomorrow, then she always aces the exams. And when the teacher quizzes her like out of nowhere, then she has all the right answers. So in that act, what we begin to realize is that it's not about assuming a formal like gesture or position of trying to meditate and trying to study. It's about how the mind is being engaged in that act. So what my roommate was doing was like she only focuses on one page or a few verses from that page and begins to contemplate in her mind, even when she's lying down, even when she's standing up. So in that process, the mind is constantly engaged in this act of contemplation and analysis. So she doesn't need to she doesn't need to assume this postures and gestures of actually studying. Her mind is always engaged in this process of contemplation and analysis, and it serves her well. So from this we can begin to understand that what actually is meditation, what actually is contemplation, and then we can from this we can understand that meditation, we can kind of engage in meditation in the way we talk, in the way we walk, in the way we eat. So all these forms of activity, if the mind is engaged properly with its object, then all forms of activity can become meditation. Yes.
약간 이제 니도 지난 맛이라고 그러는데 저도 미치겠더라. 그래도 저도 자주 있던데 오늘도 수수수수 지금 하시면 또 뭔가 요새 별로 그래 아니 지금 로바는 가지고 이제 계신 얘기 말에 서서히 지금 고대에 들어가는 거. 그래서 이제 지가를 미게 되는 레미도. 이 생각 따라 샤도 메요. 라 거드 때그 도는 실로는 거드 라 아니 지자니 뭐 바이나 무슨 마셔서 가가 되지 뭐 지를 지난로도 생들 건데 일 키우는구나. 지난로 제외 있는 그다 보지 않고 해야 돼.
Yes. So then, as opposite to this, then there are many people. There are some people who kind of are always with their books, always studying, or then they kind of do not go out that often. Sometimes they even don't take showers for days on end, saying that they want to study. But when they are quizzed by the teacher, they don't have the answers. And when they appear for the exams, they do not perform well. Even though they are putting in so much effort and dedicating so much time to their studies. So for here, we realize that it is important how the mind engages its object. Wherein even if you try to put so much effort and time into your study, if in those times the mind is distracted all the time, then your studies are ineffective. Where else if you just only study a few verses or a page and you begin to engage very actively with that topic, then you begin to have more understanding, more profound understanding and insights about your study materials. So it's very important how the mind begins to engage its objects. Yes.
하지만 그것이 로봇이래도 그것이 맛이야도 아주 나머지는 이래도 마찰이 라자면 마찬가지야. 세대들이 내 소속이 이만이면 상담을 자샤지요. 상담 그동안에 라이까.
So generally, the level of intelligence that we are blessed with in this birth, from the Buddhist perspective, is kind of linked towards one's own karma, as well as the karmic imprints from the past lives and the subsequent karmic dispositions that we have. But then it's also important how one begins to approach one day, how one begins to look, how one's mind begins to engage activities, study, anything daily. So it's important to kind of build effective habits. Yes. So then, if there are any questions about this particular topic, and if there are any sharings about your own experiences.
So, I mentioned that it's not good to meditate, or it's useless to meditate with without the studies? Is that?
Mm.
But I think most lay people will never study Buddhism. Can they have some sort of benefit from meditation even without? Or will it be different?
Yes.
Yeah.
Taking also Thosamling combating劳动制造机关来的算是，你头发的你劳动马起呢，你光比年龄的车上就是一个嘛的手表是，但是你迷茫起来去，你到哪去来的老你起嘛是，迷茫起来，你光起来不是起了是，但你工作了光就偏健康用的嘛的是，看着的是。
내가 생일이 칼로 이마디에 팽다 와 해고도 타투니까 지게 리베 이제 벌써 타투가 쇼핑 서울도 와 내가 빼는 것도 스포트 지 사계생의 노예도 지나 이거를 내서 공부하지 내가 같이 되나 뭐야 가지 지원이야 그래서 좀 쉬어지다 해변 거다 네 배우 말하지 제일 말로 지다 가서 지다 검증으로 다시 맞지 자야지 와 पाना थासे बच्चे सागे कुमार तत्वेरो लेगे जाचमज देवना करो मजना राजी रा इने तो मेरे मारा तो सेंग में से यार सेंग ठुबु दे काया छेलो बम जे
So then this is not to say that such an approach toward meditation is totally ineffective. It's meant to stress the point that ultimately, if you want to really carry on a rational analysis and a very close contemplation on the nature of reality itself and the pursuit of liberation or enlightenment, if you really want to get at a true understanding of the nature of reality itself, then without study and contemplation it is impossible. But for temporary benefits, of course, approaching meditation in this manner has its own benefits. For example, that we get a sense of respite from the normal way our minds are so turbulent, so excitable. We begin to sense we get an experience of calm and peace when we stay in a retreat for a week, and then we get a respite, a sort of freedom from the normal way that our mind is attacked by this undercurrent of thoughts and emotions. So yeah, for temporary purposes, it has its benefits, but for the ultimate purpose of achieving liberation, enlightenment, or coming to a true understanding of the nature of reality and so forth, then it's almost impossible without study and contemplation. So this is a very good question because it helps us to kind of dispel any misunderstanding about the instructions on how to cultivate meditation practices. Of course, like in all the three vehicles, when they begin to talk about shamatha, when they begin to talk about vipassana as meditation practices, then there is some place wherein we need to start our practices. So then we can build our practice from such practices, such introductory practices. And such introductory practices have their benefits. For example, as we already said, that it gives us a sense of calm from the way our normal lives. In our normal lives, our mind is so excitable, so agitated, and always attacked by this turbulence of thoughts and emotions, which are kind of endless. So such introductory meditation practices have their benefits, because when we ourselves are engaged in work throughout the week, and then during the weekend, if we have a small break, then we always have a sense of like peace, calm during the weekend. So it's like that. That's-
제가 온데 그다 얘기 나라 다시 왜 주들이 저한테 제 디마 내가 디가 하고 zamdan 배다 뒤에는 직계 배상한 통화도 수수님으로 담는 시기가 주들이 디바로 걸어도 되나? 디아고 가르 수도 가르 도바로이나 지미지 상로시스라 디상은 좀 도바데 키로나 야보라 제일 밀시나 야보라 수수 상마타나 디 먼저 직상마타나 수라 저한테 딜레 시장가레레 마시와 계제티야다 안디버로 보내지는 짱세 스페이션 세우세요 스페이션가 이배하고 저랑 반다고도 카세팅스 수수 도바가 해요 제나미 버거라 제나다 지금서 같이 제나미가 정말 아주 정말 최도로와 수수 이제 생기는 같은데 자진 시와 저랑 먼저 세기 제가 그거야 뭐라 전부 하고 말아 거기 가르치는 수수기 나다고 시에서는 배기를 보내는 야
So then, as we begin to explore these instructions in detail, citing examples, then trying to go into a detailed discussion about what the metaphors mean, what these classical metaphors mean, and then like as we have these kind of exhaustive discussions, then it's important to kind of raise questions in between in order to overcome any doubts or hesitations that we have regarding these instructions. I appreciate your questions, and I appreciate your doubts, and I encourage them at any point in the teachings, because this is very important. It's kind of useless for you to come here to these teachings and then walk away from here with the same sort of doubt and same sort of questions. It's important to kind of it's important to come to address these questions and doubts in the sessions themselves. It helps you to dispel and come to an answer to these questions, as well as it affords us the opportunity to kind of dispel any confusions or misunderstandings that could happen in this kind of exhaustive discussions about numerous different things. So questions, doubts at any point in the sessions are appreciated and encouraged. So then we break for tea now and gather again in half an hour.